Madame Guan's story begins on a grim note. One day, she discovered her father's body lying lifeless near a deserted parking lot, a sight that stirred in her not so much sorrow as a bitter cocktail of emotions, much like eating leftovers that have long lost their flavor. At his funeral, the atmosphere was eerily calm, almost as if her father had chosen that exact moment to leave without any fuss, leaving behind a trail of unspoken secrets. In life, he'd rarely shared his thoughts, and in death, his silence was all the more profound. Not long after the funeral, Madame Guan received an unexpected invitation from Yun Moyong, a shady restaurant owner and an old acquaintance of her father. His restaurant wasn't famous for its food. Rather, it had the notorious reputation of turning patrons into permanent fixtures on the menu. But Madame Guan wasn't easily rattled. When she stepped into the restaurant, a group of rough-looking thugs immediately fixed her with menacing stares. Unfazed, she simply brushed off their hostility, her calm demeanor speaking volumes. Yun Moyong, attempting a strained display of hospitality, offered her some pickles. Without a hint of hesitation, she devoured them and then casually left 2 wads of cash on the table. "This is just an advance," she remarked coolly. "There's more where that came from." Her boldness silenced the room, a reaction no one found surprising given her reputation for eccentricity, especially her habit of talking to herself, a quirk that reminded everyone of her late twin brother's lingering presence in her mind. Yun Moyong had a specific job in mind. He needed her to crack a safe designed by a master artisan, one so secure that only her skills, and those her father had once possessed, could open it. The promised payout was enormous, a fitting end to what had been a turbulent career. After weighing her options, Madame Guan agreed without missing a beat. In a stunning display of precision, she ambushed the target and swiftly dispatched the bodyguards, treating them like minor obstacles in her path. The onlookers from Yun Moyong's crew could only watch in awe as she walked away with the safe, her efficiency leaving them utterly speechless. Yet, just as admiration filled the room, the tide turned. At the pre-arranged rendezvous, Yun Moyong's true colors emerged. Out of nowhere, he shot Madame Guan twice, and in a cold move, dumped her body into a river, all while claiming the safe as his prize. Yun Moyong was as untrustworthy as a cactus in a balloon shop, and his betrayal was swift. Back at his restaurant, he reported his success to a foreign intelligence agent, handing over the safe with a confident smile. Little did he know, he was merely a pawn in a far bigger game. The safe held the mysterious Tyrant Program, a dark, viscous substance of unknown origin that the agency truly sought. However, karma has a funny way of catching up. Yun Moyong's treachery had earned him a dangerous enemy. The agency, with no intention of letting him off the hook, had already set a plan in motion. But Yun Moyong, ever the paranoid opportunist, had hired undercover agents to guard him. When the agency moved in to eliminate the threat, his own men turned on him first, leaving a trail of dead bodies as a brutal, swift cleanup. Meanwhile, the doomed Madame Guan wasn't as dead as Yun Moyong had believed. Against all odds, she reappeared on the shore of the reservoir, battered and bloodied but very much alive. Clutched tightly in her hand was a white funeral flower, the very same she had held before being plunged into the water. Somehow, even after being double-crossed, she had managed to crack the safe and secure a sample of the dangerous Tyrant Program. Though she didn't fully understand its purpose, she knew one thing for sure. It was a secret that needed to be protected at all costs. Far from the city, deep in the wilderness, Madame Guan stumbled forward, her body battered, her strength fading with every step. Blood dripped from fresh wounds, staining the dirt beneath her feet. She was running on pure survival instinct, and just when it seemed like she might collapse, she spotted something unexpected. A taxi, parked alone on a quiet road. Inside the vehicle, 3 people sat in eerie stillness. A driver, a thug, and a terrified woman who looked like she'd been kidnapped. When the driver stepped out to relieve himself, the thug seized his moment, turning his attention toward the woman, fully prepared to end her life. But before he could make a move, his head slammed into the window with a sickening crack. He barely had time to react before stumbling out of the car, dazed and furious. By the time he did, Madame Guan was already inside. She moved like a ghost, slipping into the taxi's driver's seat without a sound. The kidnapped woman, waking up in the back seat, locked eyes with her, haggard, bloodied, and looking like something out of a nightmare. For a brief second, she almost questioned if she was better off staying with her captors. But Madame Guan wasn't there to offer comfort. Survival was her only priority. Without hesitation, she slammed her foot on the gas. The thug barely had time to react before the car mowed him down, sending him flying. The driver, caught off guard as he returned, was the next to go, crushed under the speeding vehicle. The terrified woman let out a scream and bolted into the night, leaving Madame Guan behind in the now empty taxi. She barely acknowledged the woman's escape. One less driver in the world, a bit more legroom in the car. Elsewhere, elite assassin Chai Jag-young was dealing with his own bizarre assignment. His latest target? An elderly lumberjack, a man who had been raving about some monstrous, three-armed creature lurking in the woods. His strange stories, fueled by a mysterious black substance he had once come in contact with, had made him the town lunatic. His body had suffered the consequences, a grotesque infection spreading through his eye, his mind unraveling with each passing day. The locals had long since abandoned him, leaving him and his terrified wife to rot in their isolated cabin. For Chai Jag-yong, this was just another job. He arrived without fanfare, confirming the target before stepping inside the cabin. The old man's wife cowered in fear as he pressed his gun to her temple, making it clear he wasn't here to chat. With practiced efficiency, he fired a round at the black substance, ensuring it wouldn't spread. Then, without a second thought, he torched the entire cabin. Flames swallowed the wooden walls, reducing the place, and any trace of its secrets, to ash. As the fire raged behind him, Chai Jag-yong walked away, smelling of smoke but completely satisfied. Meanwhile, Madame Guan was still fighting to stay alive. She stumbled into a small, privately run clinic, where a doctor, greedy and opportunistic, agreed to patch her up, but his price was steep, and his loyalty even cheaper. When he discovered the vial of the Tyrant Program among her belongings, his greed took over. To him, this was a once-in-a-lifetime payday, a chance to cash in big. Without hesitation, he tipped off foreign intelligence agents, hoping to sell the information to the highest bidder, but he never got his reward. By the time the agents stormed into the operating room, Madame Guan was gone, vanished like a shadow. Before they could even process what was happening, she reappeared behind them, still injured but just as lethal as ever. Moving with ruthless precision, she eliminated them one by one, leaving nothing but bodies in her wake. The doctor, realizing far too late the grave mistake he had made, was left staring at the carnage in silent horror. After securing fresh clothes and cleaning herself up, Madame Guan was ready to move again. But in a darkly comedic twist, her twin brother's lingering personality nudged her into picking something unconventional. Instead of blending in, she chose an over-the-top, flashy outfit, a silent reminder that even in the middle of chaos, she knew how to make an entrance. With bullets, betrayal, and bloodshed trailing behind her, Madame Guan had one goal in mind: track down Yun Moyong and make him pay for everything. At the same time, Chai Jag-yong received his next orders. His new targets? Yun Moyong and Madame Guan. Madame Guan's first stop was Yun Moyong's restaurant. Even for someone planning murder, she checked the door latch. A small but polite habit. The place was eerily empty, a silence that made her pause. As her eyes scanned the walls, a photograph caught her attention. It sparked an idea, one that would shape her next move. Meanwhile, across the city, Paul, the fiery and relentless leader of the Foreign Intelligence Agency, was locked in a heated exchange with his Korean counterpart. His accusation was sharp, laced with contempt, spinelessness. His demand? The return of the final sample of the Tyrant Program. With tensions between agencies already on edge, Paul was more than willing to push them to the breaking point. To complete her mission, Madame Guan needed weapons. That meant seeking out Han Song, an arms trafficker with known ties to Yun Moyong. But first, a quick stop at a vending machine, 3 drinks, just enough to keep her going before the inevitable chaos. When she arrived at Han's warehouse, she was met by a grouchy doorman who barked at her, oblivious to the danger standing before him. With brutal efficiency, she silenced him, leaving him half dead. Inside, Han and a group of foreigners froze as they recognized her. There was no need for introductions. Her reputation spoke for itself. Han, sensing the inevitable, wasted no time and offered her his best weapons. But before the deal could be sealed, one of the foreigners made a foolish move. That single act ignited a storm of gunfire. When the dust settled, the warehouse was a graveyard of bodies. Only Han remained, barely clinging to life. With his final breath, he whispered a single word: Pusan. Chai Jag-yong was already there. A man of ruthless precision, he had wasted no time in obliterating one of Yun Moyong's hideouts. When Madame Guan arrived, their paths crossed at the entrance. Instinctively, they sized each other up. 2 threats, 2 wild cards. She broke the tension with a dry joke, calling him a priest, before letting him walk away. Oddly enough, they chose not to fight. At least, not yet. Inside the hideout, Madame Guan found nothing but corpses. A small relief, knowing Yun Moyong wasn't among them. She wanted to be the one to kill him. Meanwhile, outside, Chai Jag-yong found himself ambushed by Yun Moyong's goons. A fatal mistake on their part. He dispatched them with ease, his skills unmatched. Determined to track Yun Moyong down, Madame Guan hunted for a lead. She found one, a man from the restaurant photo. Under her interrogation, he confessed the truth. Yun Moyong wasn't working alone. He had the backing of the Foreign Intelligence Agency. But before she could dig deeper, Chai Jag-yong appeared, ending the man's life in a blink. As Madame Guan turned to leave, Chai Jag-yong blocked her path, demanding answers. She remained calm, almost amused, and proposed they work together. The alliance lasted mere seconds. She shot him in the foot, and he retaliated, wounding her arm. Both retreated, forced to patch themselves up before round 2. Still, Madame Guan had one priority. She asked Chai Jag-yong, flatly, if Yun Moyong was dead. When he confirmed he wasn't, she exhaled. Good, that was her job. But then, an unexpected problem arose. Chai Jag-yong received an update. Yun Moyong was alive and under agency protection. Wounded and unable to drive, he had no choice but to toss his car keys to Madame Guan, forcing them into an uneasy partnership. Elsewhere, Yun Moyong was already on the run. His car sped down the highway, his desperation mounting with every mile. But he wasn't fast enough. Paul's men had already closed in, their tactics swift and surgical. In moments, they surrounded him, ripping apart his escape plan. Dragged from the wreckage, Yun Moyong knew better than to resist. Paul had no patience for theatrics. He promised cooperation, but his true intention was far darker. Under his breath, he whispered a chilling ambition to present Director Choi's head on a silver platter. Director Choi was already there, bound and helpless like an urgent delivery. But Paul wasn't ready to kill him. Not yet. Choi knew too much, and Paul wanted every last secret. Meanwhile, across the room, another figure paced furiously. Yan Mo Young, now stepping into Yun Moyong's place, was seething. His voice cracked with rage as he accused Director Choi of betrayal. He was convinced Choi had sent Chai Jagyong to kill him, a claim that turned the room into a battlefield of blame and suspicion. Unbeknownst to them, Madame Guan and Chai Jagyong were closing in. The convoy's guards, cocky and overconfident, smirked as they prepared for a fight. It was the kind of arrogance that only leads to regret, like a turkey feeling safe the day before Christmas. They had no idea what was coming. As Chai Jagyong and Madame Guan neared their destination, an unexpected threat appeared. A superhuman operative stepped directly in front of their speeding car, blocking it with nothing but his shoulder. He didn't flinch. Instead, he inspected the vehicle like a predator assessing its prey, his presence radiating danger. Madame Guan didn't hesitate. Without a second thought, she pulled the trigger, landing a clean shot to his head. But instead of dropping, the man merely staggered back, unfazed. Then, in a flash, he retaliated, his sheer strength sending Madame Guan flying through the air. Before he could finish her off, Chai Jagyong struck like a phantom. With ruthless efficiency, he shattered the operative's foot, a move no amount of pain tolerance could ignore. The man barely had time to react before a rapid series of headshots brought his reign of terror to an abrupt end. Safe for the moment, Chai Jagyong turned to check on Madame Guan, only to see something alarming. The inky black substance from the Tyrant Program was creeping across her face, spreading like wildfire. When he confronted her, she admitted the sample container had broken, but she dismissed his concern. "I have it under control," she assured him. With no time to argue, they pressed on, determined to reach Yun Moyong before he could slip away. Meanwhile, Paul and his men arrived at an abandoned theater, once Director Choi's secret base. Frustration and rage burned in Paul's eyes. His prized superhuman operative was dead, and someone had stolen the sample. He wanted answers. Now, his subordinate stammered, failing to provide anything useful. Paul, never one to accept failure lightly, executed a few of them on the spot, his patience wearing thin. Under the mounting pressure, Yun Moyong panicked and blurted out the truth. Madame Guan still had the sample. Paul's fury immediately shifted toward him. Before Paul could act, the doors burst open. Madame Guan and Chai Jagyong had arrived. Chaos erupted instantly. The two were separated in the mayhem. Chai Jagyong took on the thugs while Madame Guan faced off against another superhuman, one even more formidable than the last. The battle was merciless. The Tyrant Program had enhanced Madame Guan's strength, making her hits devastating, but her opponent refused to go down. With monstrous power, he hurled her through a concrete wall like she weighed nothing. On the other side of the theater, Chai Jagyong finally had Paul cornered, but the agency leader, ever the smug diplomat, smirked. He believed his diplomatic immunity made him untouchable. What he didn't realize was that Director Choi had already decided his fate. The old director, weary yet resolute, made it clear Paul wasn't walking away from this. Meanwhile, Yun Moyong, ever the coward, saw an opportunity to escape in the chaos. But Chai Jagyong was faster. With clinical precision, he fired 2 shots into Yun's legs, ensuring he wouldn't be running anywhere. "He's all yours," Chai Jagyong muttered to Madame Guan, leaving her to deliver the final judgment. Bloodied but unyielding, Madame Guan returned for her final confrontation. Armed with nothing but a metal rod, she faced down the superhuman, her eyes blazing with determination. The fight was brutal, steel clashed, bones shattered, and the theater walls crumbled around them. In the end, it was Madame Guan who stood victorious, impaling her enemy against a column with his own machete. Without a moment's hesitation, she turned to Yun Moyong and ended him with a single, calculated shot. But the victory was short-lived. Chai Jagyong, always focused on the mission, turned his gun on Madame Guan, shooting her in the head before the infection could take full control. Yet to his shock, she rose again. The Tyrant Program had fully fused with her body, making her something far beyond human, something unstoppable. From the shadows, Director Choi took action. He flicked a switch, flooding the theater with blinding spotlights. Instantly, Madame Guan recoiled, agony twisting her features. The light had become her new weakness. Chai Jagyong saw his opening and attacked, but Madame Guan, now completely under the tyrant's influence, retaliated with terrifying precision. She shot out the lights, plunging the room into suffocating darkness. Now fully transformed, she turned her gaze toward Director Choi, ready to finish him. But the old director, ever composed, simply warned her. If she didn't disappear before sunrise, she wouldn't survive. The Tyrant Program had given her strength, but it had also cursed her. Then came another complication. Reinforcements from the foreign agency stormed in, their weapons ready. Escape was impossible. Seeing no other way, Director Choi urged Chai Jag-yong and Madame Guan to flee. Despite his injuries, Chai Jag-yong fought through the advancing guards, his body pushed past its limits. In a desperate move, he sprinted toward the shattered theater window and dove into the river below. Bullets tore through the air, some finding their mark, but he vanished beneath the cold, dark waters. Inside the theater, Director Choi made his final decision. He could not allow himself to be captured. Feigning surrender, he reached for a stray weapon and turned it on himself. A single shot rang out, ensuring that no more secrets of the Tyrant Program would fall into enemy hands. For him, death was a necessary sacrifice to prevent an even greater disaster. The last image was haunting. His lifeless form drifted down the river, swallowed by the relentless current. It was a fitting end to a battle where even the dawn brought no comfort. And as the dust settled, one thing was clear: the real fight had only just begun.